Hello friends, you're welcome to the part 4 of building Golang REST API using the standard library. I know it's been a while since I last uploaded a video. This was because I lost most of my Golang YouTube folder. So I had to build a new project so that we can match up to where we stopped. This folder may be a little bit different from what you have in the part 1 and part 2, but I tried all I could to make it look like what we had in part 1, part 2, and part 3. So in this lesson, we'll look at how we can write the login endpoint. Just a bit of recap. We wrote a auth endpoint. This is to generate the GWT and to validate the GWT. We have our db config. Let me zoom in a bit. So the db config is a function that holds our database URL, and our database of choice is Postgres. So we also have a server config where we have a fallback to the server port, which is 8081. Then we have our database URL. So this is just like a decoy. The actual database URL is inside our .env. We have our environment as development, and our log level is info. And also we have our request here. So we have our create user request and our login request. We have our error handler so this error handler is just so that we don't repeat the response writer at all instances. So again, we have our core handler for handling DB queries and whatnot. And migration is done with SQL and DBMate. This is our user model. So we have this serialization going on here. We have our ID, username, email, password, and date created and date updated. We have our routes here. On line 11, we have for user routes, and on line 12, we have for health routes. So we brought in our mux and our handler. And this stuff folder was generated to us by our SQL. We have our success response. So in our success response, we have a struct that holds a message and a data. And we have a password used for hashing and comparing our password. And we have a validate function. We have our env. And lastly, we have our main.go. So in this main.go, what we have here is to load the config, connect to the database, initialize the SQL queries, create a new handler, set up a new server. We want to mount the route and pass in our ports. Then we want to start a server, and in the case of any error, we want to log the error out. So this is a high-level overview of what we have so far. So quickly, let's jump to the login part. For the login, it's going to look pretty much like what we have for the register. Let's move to our handler user.go. I'll close my Explorer. So I'll write login here. Login a user. Then write our func. Then we bring in our handler. It's going to reference to the handler that we created. We can call this login user handler. It's going to be a return type of the http.undo handler func. Then we are going to return what we have here. So let's copy and paste here. Can close this. So let's bring in our context. Context is going to be request.context. Then we bring in our login request. Do var request should be a request dot login request. We can also copy this just for validation. Copy this point here and we can paste. Let's reformat. Right. So this is our login request. Then we need to decode our request body. In the case of the request body, we send out this error. We respond with this error, which is a 400 with an invalid request payload. Then we want to validate each field. If you remember, we have a validate.go. So this is what we wrote in the last lesson. Then it will validate for each field that we have in our login request. For example, if the minimum character should be 3, it should not be less than 3, and the max only more than 30. So let's move on with what we have. So the next thing is to fetch the user from the DB using the store queries. Like so. So we want to do user, and it might be an error. So I do h.queries. That is the handlers.queries dot get by username or email. So this is coming from the generated codes. If I go into definition, it's coming from this store here. We wrote this that we want to get a user by either the username or the email. So we can get it by the username or the email. So we pass in our context and our request dot username. And if error does not equal to nil, we can bring in our error handler dot respond with error, pass in our writer, then status should be unauthorized, like so. Then let's do invalid username or password, or better still, you can do invalid credential. Then we want to return this. All right. So the next thing to do is to check our password match. You want to compare the password that is coming from the client side against the one inside our database. So we do if not utils. So we have our utils coming from the internal gotemp dot compare password. Then we want to pass in our user that we got from the DB dot password and against our request, which is this request dot password. So this compare password is just using bcrypt to compare our password. Then we can return an error. Let's copy this and paste. Can remove this line. So if the password doesn't match, we are returning the same error as invalid credential. But if we enter a correct password, the next thing to do is to create our token. So we can have GWT key It's gonna be a byte. Then we get it from our os.get env. So we can pass in our jwt secret that'll be coming from our env, like so, and we can say token, and the error would be auth generate token, or jwt. So, and it's expecting the user ID, username, the key, and it will return a token and an error here. So let's view that. We need to cast the ID to int64. Then I'll pass user.id, like so. Then user.username. Then the last one is the secret key, which we call the jwt key here, like so. And let's undo the error. If error does not equal to nil, in case of error, we can bring this and paste here. Let's remove this line and let's do say internet server error, and do error generating a token, like so. And at the end, let's return the token. So success response dot respond with success. Then we do write the status should be http dot okay. Then we're gonna have login success, and we need a map of the token. So I'll do map. The type should be of string, and this here also be of a string, and can have token should be equals to the token that we created, like so. Token, and we need a trailing comma. Let's remove this. So we created the handler here. So this is the handler. Let's go over it again. We have a context on line 21 and 23. We are using our DTO, which is our login request. We decoded request body, also passing the validation here, and we need to fetch if user is in our DB. So you can either use a username or you can use your email, and in the case of error, you want to return invalid credentials, and if the password is not correct too, we are returning the same error. We have a secret key. Then we generated a token using our username, user ID, and the key. And in the case of generating a key, a token, we want to return this error, and if not, return the token. So let's go to our route. User route. Then we can write a handler. So we can do usermux dot undo func. This is going to be a post request too. Post request. And let's call it login. and it'll be handler dot login handler. So this is not working because we wrote it in lowercase. So let's go back to our handler, user handler here. So the login should be in capital. Let's go back and do login user handler, and we have it here, like so. Then let's rerun the app again. Go run, may not go. So let's go back here. Oh, we should not have this here. So let's clear the screen and let's run again. So we have our DB connected and our server running on 8081. So let's give it a whirl. Can open my Postman. So Postman is taking time to load. Let me close this and let's use this REST client. So create client here. So I have this REST client. Let's create a new user. We'll call it test user at Yopmail. The username is test user. So I'll leave the password as admin123. So I'll come here and I'll run it here. So the response message is user created successfully. Right. So let's log in this user. Username is test user, and the admin, and the password is admin123. So I'll use a wrong password first. And let's run this rest. So we got the invalid credential. So if I remove this Y here and I do a rest run again, rest run, so we got the token, right? So we got login successful. Data is, so we got a login successful data and the token is here. So if we copy this token, let's yank in between this and we head over to our browser to lobby2.io, and I can paste the token here. So we have user ID is 5 and username is test user, and the expiration time is this, and the issuer is go temp. So this brings us to the end of this lesson, which is the part 4, the login endpoint. In the next class, we would write a protected endpoint to fetch a user profile. If you enjoyed this video, please do well to leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.